In this video, we're going to simulate running our existing project for the first time in iOS 15. And it was a little tricky on how to structure this section because, a lot of people have already taken this course. So some of you are actually coming through this for the first time, but some of you are revisiting, like you're updating the existing code base. So it's a little tricky to cover both angles, but we're going to go with this updating existing code base example, right? And this is a very common thing to do on your code base when a new iOS releases, right? So you want to run your code to find all the bugs, find all the errors to see what's going on. So here I am on the Search VC. And by the way, the code that I'm starting with is the code that you can download from the final pass video that some of you may have just done. Others may be returning. It's 46-gh followers. That's the file you can download on that video. But that was the final, code for the course. We're starting from there just for the context. That's what I got open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gh followers project. And on the project here, I'm going to just change this to iOS 15 because I want to see all the errors, any bugs, any issues I have when I'm targeting iOS 15. And then check the target down here. Yes, we are. Deployment info is iOS 15 there as well. So I'm going to do a Command B to build it, see what kind of errors, issues we get. And okay, there's one. And sometimes, right, it depends on the Swift update. It depends on the iOS update. Sometimes you can get a ridiculous amount of errors. Back in the day when we did the Swift 2 to Swift 3 update, doing this, what we're doing right now, was a nightmare. Everything was broken. It's gotten a lot better since then. As you can see, we only have one warning. So what I do is I click on this warning, and some of you have pointed this out previously in the course, but how we made our protocols class, this has been deprecated for a while, and I'll actually link to the Swift forums post in the description of this video that discusses that. But now they finally are starting to enforce it in Xcode. So you can say, and not even enforce it, right? They're just putting a warning. They're not like breaking your code. But now anywhere you have class, any object, and they do the same thing. So I'm going to copy that, and we'll do a Command B to get my warnings to show up because I'm lazy. That way I can just click on that, go to that, make that any object. Do a Command B, get the next warning, go to that, make this any object. Command B, I think that's the only places we had that. Nope, looks like there's one more. I mean, you could go through your code and find them, but I like the warnings to guide me. But that's going to take care of all the warnings, right? So relatively easy, not too bad. Again, just to be clear, not every update is this simple and easy. And it also depends on your code base, what frameworks you're using, all that stuff. But we had it relatively easy. So after I clear my initial errors off of an update, I like to run the app and just see hey, anything going on here? Anything weird going on? I check every screen to see if there's any layout issues, UI stuff. Again, just make sure your app is working and running on the new iOS, in our case, iOS 15. So here we are, the app is running. Everything looks fine. The first thing you may notice is look at our tab bar. There's no more bar looking thing. Remember there was that gray bar at the bottom to separate the tab bar? Well, that is nothing we did wrong. That is the new iOS 15 style built into the system. That's how Apple does things now. You'll see on a future screen, if there's content behind that, they'll put that bar up there to differentiate. But if there's no content, they keep it like this. Again, that's not our code bugging out. That's the new iOS 15 style. So this screen behaving as normal. All right, let's find a user. Do myself as always, get followers. That's not right. Okay, so again, you're going to run into stuff like this anytime there's an update. And this is why Apple puts out the betas in June so developers can handle all this stuff so they can be ready by late September when everything's official, right? You get those few months to work on your app. So you're going to have to deal with stuff like this. So, okay. Yeah, that's not great. But you see how our tab bar now is differentiated down at the bottom? That's because there's content scrolling behind it. So it's kind of like a smart tab bar. That's the new thing. Okay, let's click on a follower. Okay, so our modal is fine. It's working. Button's looking good. That is as expected. Hit done. Okay, cool. So our follower cell is a little messed up. Let's add Sean to our favorites here. Okay, our alert looking good. Hooray. Cool. Let's go to our favorites. Favorites looking good. I click here, and that's obviously bad. So that is the main issue with our UI. Again, if I go here, our follower cell is a bit messed up. So I'm going to recreate, obviously I've already done this to prepare for these videos, but I'm going to recreate the process I went through to show you how I discovered the fix for this. So the first thing I do when I see weird UI issues like this is I hit our little icon down here to blow this up. I think I showed this off before earlier in the course, but this will blow up the UI to see what's going on, right? And I can spin this around so I can see like, okay, my cells, right? You can see like the individual squares for the cells. That looks to be the right size. However, the image is just expanding well beyond the cell. Okay, so this was the first step, just to see if maybe like my cell was a different size, but it looks like the cells are the right size. My image just is not adhering to that. Okay, so that was the first clue. And then the second clue, if I will stop running that, I think I could have just stopped that, but I'll go back. So the second clue, right, I'll just go to the favorites, right? I was like, well, okay, my favorite cell seems to be working fine, right? If everything with my cells was messed up, wouldn't this image be messed up? So that was a second clue. So again, this is my process. What I decided to do, stop running this. I was like, okay, if my favorite cell is fine, but my follower cell isn't fine, let me see what I'm doing differently. So that's what I did. I opened up my custom views, cells. I opened up my follower cell on the left, follower cell on the left and favorite cell on the right. By the way, if you option click on whatever file, that'll open it up in the assistant editor. Now, like I say, for these videos, I have to have my text super blown up, so it may be hard to see. Maybe I'll go like this for now to give us some more room. But anyway, yeah, I'm recreating my process here. So I was looking at my follower cell and looking at my favorite cell and like, okay, what did I do different? Because the favorite cell is working. And if I come down here to the constraints, and it's going to be hard to read because I'm going to minimize the text, right? Just for my sanity. Okay, sorry if you can't quite read that, but I'll point out what it was. So I started looking at my constraints and I noticed the difference, right? Over here on the right, my favorite cell, I am just constraining to self, right? Which is just the cell itself, right? Because this is a class of a favorite cell of type UI table view cell. So I was like, okay, but over here on the follower cell, if you look, I'm pinning all my constraints for like my image and stuff to the content view. So I was like, I don't know what Apple did behind the scenes, but for some reason now in iOS 15, it doesn't like being pinned to the content view. So now that I've shown the difference, I can delete my favorite cell. And all I did was basically delete all the content views, right? And just instead of pinning it to content view, just pin it to leading anchor, top anchor, trailing anchor, just pinning it to the cell itself rather than the content view within the cell. Because again, I didn't dig under the hood to try to figure out what Apple was doing with auto layout. I mean, that would have been, I didn't want to go down that path. I was like, okay, so obviously that's not it. And then for consistency, back to our favorite cell here, we'll open that up. Super minimal thing, right? I just get rid of the self. And that's just purely code style. If you like self there, fine. I like to be consistent in how I do it. We're just going to get rid of the selves there. Not sure why I didn't even do that the original time around, but hey. Okay, back to our follower cell. That's good. So now I run it again, and this should be working. Okay, enter username, my name, hit get followers. There we go. Now our cells are as expected. Click on one of them. Everything's still working as expected. Okay, so we'll close that and double check on our favorite cell just because we did make some changes by deleting self. Shouldn't affect it, but I always like to better safe than sorry and check that out. So anyway, I don't know why I pulled that down, but that is the process that I go through, right? I run the project, with iOS 15, clear out any errors, any deprecations, any stuff like that. Again, we had it easy in this case. It's not always that easy. And then I run the app, go through, make sure there's no UI issues like we saw, and then I fix the UI issues. And now it's at a state where, okay, it's running fine on iOS 15. I fixed the errors, I fixed the UI stuff. Now, once I've got it good to go on iOS 15 with the existing stuff, now it's time to look at like new functionality, right? Like refactoring into async await or doing the new UI button configurations, all the new stuff. But the first step is to fix anything that got broke in iOS 15, and that's what we just did.